The picturesque town of Dyersburg, Tennessee, nestled along the Mississippi River, is the kind of place where neighbors know each other and life is quiet. But in 2015, the town became the focus of national attention due to the mysterious disappearance and subsequent murder of Karen Swift, a 44-year-old mother of 4. What began as a seemingly ordinary day with a yard sale ended in tragedy, leaving behind a puzzle that remains unsolved to this day. On October 30th, 2015, Karen Swift spent her Saturday hosting a yard sale at her home. A devoted mother, she was known for her vivacious personality and active involvement in the community. The yard sale drew numerous visitors throughout the day as Karen cheerfully interacted with buyers, many of whom were neighbors and acquaintances. For Karen, it was an opportunity to declutter her home and connect with others in her close-knit community. That evening, Karen attended a Halloween party with friends. She returned home late and spoke briefly with her estranged husband, David Swift, who still lived in the family home despite their ongoing divorce proceedings. According to reports, the two had a cordial but strained relationship, sharing the residence to co-parent their children. In the early hours of October 31st, Karen went missing. When Karen's friends and family realized that she had vanished, alarm bells went off. Her car, a white 2004 Nissan Murano, was found abandoned on a rural road just a few miles from her home. The vehicle's tires were flat, and her belongings, including her purse and phone, were left inside. However, there was no sign of Karen herself. Dyer County authorities immediately launched a search. Friends, family, and volunteers combed through nearby wooded areas, fields, and waterways, hoping to find any trace of Karen. Her disappearance struck fear into the hearts of the community, as speculation swirled about what might have happened. Was she abducted by someone that she met at the yard sale? Was her estranged husband involved, or was it the work of a stranger? The case took a devastating turn on December 10, 2015, when Karen's decomposed body was discovered in a wooded area near a cemetery, less than 3 miles from her home. Her remains were concealed under foliage, and the area appeared to have been deliberately chosen to hide her body. An autopsy revealed that she had suffered blunt force trauma to the head. The discovery confirmed what many had feared. Karen Swift had been murdered. However, the identity of her killer remained a mystery, and the investigation into her death became more complex as authorities sifted through a growing list of suspects. Karen's life was undergoing significant changes at the time of her death. She had recently filed for divorce from David Swift, citing irreconcilable differences. Friends described the marriage as troubled, with Karen seeking a fresh start. The divorce proceedings, however, were contentious, and David's behavior came under scrutiny following Karen's disappearance. In addition to her marital struggles, Karen had been involved in local fitness groups and was active on social media. Her outgoing personality and wide circle of acquaintances led investigators to explore whether someone she knew could have harbored ill intentions. One of the more intriguing aspects of the case was the yard sale Karen hosted on the day before her disappearance. A yard sale is a public event attracting strangers to a private residence. Investigators considered the possibility that Karen's killer might have been someone who attended the sale and used it as an opportunity to target her. However, no concrete evidence linked any of the yard sale attendees to the murder. As the investigation progressed, David Swift became a person of interest. Though he publicly denied any involvement, his strained relationship with Karen and his presence at the family home on the night of her disappearance drew suspicion. Friends of Karen claimed that she expressed fear of David in the weeks leading up to her death, and there were rumors of past domestic disputes. And despite these allegations, authorities did not charge David Swift with any crime. He cooperated with the investigation and maintained his innocence, but the cloud of suspicion continued to hang over him. Other theories emerged as well. Some speculated that Karen's killer could have been a stranger who abducted her after her car broke down. Others suggested that she might have been the victim of someone she had met through her social circles or online activity. However, none of those theories produced definitive leads. As months turned into years, the investigation into Karen Swift's murder stalled. Despite the efforts of law enforcement and private investigators, no arrests were made and no new evidence came to light. The lack of witnesses and forensic evidence left the case at a standstill, frustrating Karen's family and friends. The community of Dyersburg remained haunted by Karen's death. Her children, left without their mother, faced the difficult task of moving forward while grappling with unanswered questions surrounding her murder. Karen's friends continued to advocate for justice, organizing memorials and raising awareness about her case in the hopes of keeping it in the public eye. Several key questions remain unanswered. Who killed Karen Swift? Was it someone she knew or a random attacker? Investigators have never publicly identified a suspect or motive. The flat tires on Karen's vehicle suggest that she may have been forced to stop, but it's unclear whether this was staged or coincidental. While there is no evidence tying the yard sale to her murder, the timing raises questions about whether someone who attended the sale might have returned later. And despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, the case remains unsolved, leading to frustration and speculation about investigative missteps or lack of resources. Karen Swift's murder remains one of the most perplexing and tragic cases in Tennessee's recent history. Her family continues to seek answers, holding out hope that new evidence will emerge or that someone with knowledge of the crime will come forward. In the meantime, her case serves as a chilling reminder of how quickly life can change and the enduring pain of unanswered questions. For the residents of Dyersburg, the loss of Karen Swift is a scar that is yet to heal. Her vibrant spirit and love for her children are remembered, even as the search for her killer continues.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
Summer of 2019, I'm browsing some Grindr profiles when I come across this guy that looked like a cuter, twinkier version of my ex-boyfriend Alejandro. I was smitten. I think I have a thing for Latino guys, and this one ticked all my boxes. He was actually from Argentina, so the accent had me swooning, and after I made him laugh with my terrible Spanish, we agreed to meet up for some cocktails one night at a bar here in Austin. When we met, his attitude was a huge red flag. He seemed temperamental and bratty, but my God, it was the weirdest turn-on for me coming from him. Anyone else and I'd think I'd have been searching for an excuse to leave early. But this guy, I could have sat and listened to him talk for hours. He was so intense and got so mad about certain political topics, but if you hadn't guessed already, that Latin passion was something wild horses couldn't pull me away from. Oh, and another thing, I had expected to be paying for the drinks all night. Not trying to be too presumptive, just a dynamic I'd experienced previously since I was a few years older. But this guy was pulling his credit card out left and right and center, and some of our drink orders were pretty steep. I had no idea how someone so young could afford such amenities, but needless to say, I was impressed. They did, however, talk like a machine gun. They jumped from topic to topic, with the overarching theme being essentially, I have a lot of money, don't need to work, and I don't know what to do with my life. Sounds like one of those good problems, right? In anyone else, that kind of attitude would have maybe rubbed me the wrong way, but like I said, I could have listened to that accent all night. At one point during the date, this absolute bear of a man approached my date, whispered something in his ear, and my date kind of waved him away. My first thought is that this person was asking if they could buy him a drink and that he'd rightly dismissed them since he was out with me. But there was something else about the way they acted that made me think they'd met previously. I asked my date if he knows that guy, and he says no. But some people aren't very good at lying, and my date was one of them. I just smiled, nodded, and took the answer at face value. It wouldn't do me any good to start a pointless argument at this stage. And besides, it wasn't long after that they let slip about something that explained some of their more erratic behavior, and maybe even that weird interaction with the older guy. He told me that he was sorry if it seemed a little tense. It's just that he missed his daddy, who had been in an accidental shooting and was still recovering in the hospital. I told him he didn't have to talk about it and that I was really sorry it had happened, but he took it upon himself to vent about it to me, and I was more than willing to be the shoulder to cry on, so to speak. But after I noticed a few weird inconsistencies with what they were saying, creepiness and red flags started popping everywhere, and the more he talked, the more it sounded like his family was involved in some kind of organized crime. I thought I might have just been a bit overdramatic and, well, assuming a Latino guy was involved in crime just because he has money? That's some problematic thinking right there, I thought. But it wasn't the incident with his wallet that convinced me he was bad news. A few hours into the date, the tough-looking guy approaches him again, and he doesn't show a shred of shame that I'd obviously caught him lying. Another huge red flag right there, but the date was about to end, so again, no point making a scene over it. My date apologizes, tells me he has to leave, and promises me that he'll text me before he gets up and leaves. But, oh no. He's left his wallet on the table, and when I finally notice, I chase after him to give his wallet back. I'm almost caught up to him in the street outside the bar when the tough-looking guy tackles me so hard it almost knocks me off my feet. The guy is cursing in Spanish at me, winding up his fist to knock my teeth out, and I'm completely terrified, begging him, please don't hit me, he forgot his wallet. I have, insert the guy's name's wallet. And there wasn't even a hint of an apology from either of them. That guy's card must have had a limit in the thousands, but they didn't seem to be bothered that he'd almost lost it, nor that I'd been nice enough to return it. Again, that really didn't sit right with me, but I didn't get any confirmation on this until months later. I told my roommate about the weird date, and she was fascinated. Being something of a true crime addict, she was dying to know if the guy I'd been out with was the son of some Mexican cartel kingpin or something. But I told her she could safely rule that out since he was, Argentinian, not Mexican, but that turned out to be the one piece of information she'd need. Turns out his dad was killed over drug-related matters and was apparently quite the rising star in the Rio Negro cocaine trade down there in Argentina. The killers hadn't been caught yet, and everything was incredibly sketchy. It was not a professional, but a partner in crime. Some kind of business arrangement gone very, very wrong, and they were trying to throw the cops off the scent by telling people it was, drumroll, an accidental shooting. Then, when I saw a picture of the guy who had been shot, he looked exactly like an older, less moisturized version of my date. It was uncanny. That's when the penny dropped, and I knew where all that wealth came from. And not only that, but disparate clues were all over those articles which pointed out that he might just be the next target, and that a huge chunk of their money had gone missing. I can't remember exactly what the article said, but it heavily implied that the dealer's family had gone into hiding somewhere, having probably taken the stolen money with them, and if this was true, they'd most definitely be the target of rival cartel hitmen. The man who kept bothering us wasn't some interloper looking to steal my date from me. He was a bodyguard, something I hadn't quite figured out at the time of the tackling incident. I know, but hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? And this also meant that there was a slim chance that whoever was looking to kill him might have found him while he was out on our date. Maybe that's why they got out of there so suddenly. They'd been tipped off or something. Maybe felt something was off or wrong. I could have been killed in the crossfire. Maybe they'd have thought that I was involved somehow and just killed me too. Obviously, I didn't want to see the guy again, but I did feel like I owed him an explanation. He had enough going on in his life, and I didn't want to give an already damaged person some kind of abandonment complex. But when I went to text, the message wouldn't deliver. And when I called, a recorded message told me the number had been disconnected. To be honest, I think they got him. Maybe only 36 hours after our date. I think I really did narrowly dodge witnessing a murder happen right in front of my eyes. And let me tell you, that's not something I ever want to have to consider, ever again.
On the morning of October 19, 1971, Cheryl Spiegel woke up a very excited young lady. It was her 10th birthday, and although she was headed to school that morning, her family had promised her cake and presents on her return home. Obviously, she was very excited. It was her day, her special day, so it was only natural that the birthday girl got a few extra minutes in bed, especially when her regular wake-up time was around 5:30 in the morning. If this meant that Cheryl didn't depart for the school bus with her brothers as she normally did. Instead, she left the house at around 6:25 a.m., headed out into the dark, foggy fall morning all alone. It was a walk that should have just taken a few minutes tops, but Cheryl never made it to school that day. In fact, the morning of Cheryl's birthday will be the last time anyone would see her alive in the mysteries surrounding her death, with puzzle professional and amateur detectives alike for years to come. Following her missing persons report being filed, local police officers conducted interviews with classmates, neighbors, and members of the Spiegel family itself, but not a single person could provide any useful information. The streets had been all but deserted when Sherwood appeared, when local newspaper began reporting sightings of Cheryl in the surrounding area. The police focused their investigation around the possibility of her running away from home, a dire mistake at a crucial time in the investigation, as it amounted to little more than wishful thinking. Because around 2 weeks later, a milk delivery driver was out on his usual morning rounds when he found he needed to take a leak. He pulled over to the side of an isolated country road when he noticed an odd grouping of rocks in the creek bed below him. It appeared as though they'd been deliberately stacked almost like a pyramid shape. The driver's curiosity got the better of him, and he headed down the slope to further investigate the odd formation. But when he did so, he noticed a small child-sized arm visible in one of the small crevices. The flesh was hideously discolored, with its owner obviously deceased, so the horrified delivery driver rushed to call 911. Shortly afterwards, emergency services arrived at the scene, collecting the corpse, which would soon be identified as the missing Cheryl Spiegel. The birthday girl had been stabbed a total of 26 times, with some of the stab wounds so deep that they ran through her completely. However, they didn't appear to have been the result of a knife. Rather, the wounds were small and puncture-like in nature, as if she had been stabbed with a needle-like instrument. She had also been stripped completely nude, but thankfully, there was little evidence of any kind of physical violation having occurred in a horrible twist of fate. It was her older brother's 11th birthday when her father was summoned to identify her body, forcing him to bear witness to the savage, frenzied manner in which she had been killed. Cheryl was buried 2 days after her body was found on November 6, 1971. Her family held a small ceremony for her at Highland Cemetery in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, and the search for her killer continued with the ever-pervading question: did her birthday play any significance in her abduction, or was it simply a horrible coincidence? Homicide detectives surveyed the surrounding area but didn't find much of interest. The only pertinent location was a gas station, an ATM machine at a bank, and a McDonald's had stayed open until 5 a.m. Aside from those late-night businesses, there were no reasons to be in the area at such a time. But canvassing the area came up with 4 major persons of interest, all of which were spoken to by police. The first was a man who lived across the street from the Spiegel house. According to more than one witness statement, this man would sometimes sit on the porch or in his car and watch the children, not in a wholesome way either. People say that there was something to this man's stare, something chilling in the years following Cheryl's murder. His concerning behavior continued to make his neighbors uncomfortable, even if he was eventually cleared of suspicion. Although he refused to take a polygraph test, which was highly suspicious, it turned out that he had an airtight alibi, as he had been working as a day laborer for a company in nearby Cincinnati. The second person of interest was another of Cheryl's neighbors, a drug-addicted member of a local car theft ring. He had served prison time had a history of violence. Some was known to be extremely volatile. His alibi for the morning of Cheryl's disappearance was flimsy at best, and he openly admitted to having seen her walk to the bus stop, making him the last person to see her alive. However, he was open to taking a polygraph test, and he actually passed it, despite several people in the street saying they were terrified of him. The third person of interest was obviously the person who claimed to have found the body, the milk delivery driver. This man lived several counties away from the milk company, but he would end his route each day on the road where Cheryl's body was discovered. This daily proximity to her and her family would have given him ample opportunity to plan a successful kidnapping. However, there was no other evidence of his guilt. The man passed a polygraph test and was said to be emotionally devastated by the accusation. Not long after, the police ruled him out. The fourth and final person of interest was a small business owner from the same town. This man was not initially on the police radar as being involved in Cheryl's murder, but several years after, he was charged with assaulting young girls, pleading guilty in a court of law. There was local talk about him bragging about having stabbed Cheryl and putting her in the creek, but the man flatly denied those rumors as hearsay. Police did interview him, and he agreed to take a polygraph test, which he passed beyond him supposedly bragging about the murder. There was no forensic evidence to ever tie him to the crime. It should be made clear that Cheryl's dad and stepmother were never considered suspects, and her biological mother was nowhere near Kentucky during the early 70s. However, a couple of interesting facts remain. Cheryl's father said he saw his daughter leave for the bus stop at 6:25 a.m., and no one else reported having seen Cheryl out on the street, which surely would have been busy with other kids and parents out and about that morning. What's more, after Cheryl's body was found, no headstone was ever purchased for her by her immediate family. And the speaker was left town entirely just 2 months later. Cheryl's brother later said that their father never talked about Cheryl or her murder ever again. Whether this was down to guilt or simply grief, it's impossible to know. So what really happened to little Cheryl Spiegel? Was it some kind of horrible accident? Or was foul play to blame? And what exactly made all those tiny pinprick wounds that punctured the length of the breadth of her tiny body? At best, some kind of vicious predatory killer with an unusual weapon cost them. But at worst, someone or something is still out there, and it's hunting children.